Hash the water spirit of the old Riverside dock. Some stories only need to be heard once to make you afraid of stepping into a river after nightfall for the rest of your life. In the Mekong Delta, the elders have passed down the same warning for generations. If you ever hear someone calling your name from the river at midnight, never answer, because whatever is calling you may no longer be human. More than 30 years ago, there was a small village along the banks of the TI-1EC1N River. Near the edge of the village stood an old riverside dock that had long been abandoned. Years before, it had been the heart of the community. Boats came and went from sunrise until dusk. Women gathered there to wash clothes. Children laughed as they swam in the river. Fishermen returned with fresh catches every morning. Then everything changed. A series of mysterious drownings began, one after another. No one could explain them. Before long, the dock was deserted. The villagers gave it a new name, the Haunted Dock, or as everyone whispered, the Dock of the Water Spirit. No one remembered who first called it that. But every year, whenever the river swelled during the rainy season, someone disappeared, without a scream, without a struggle. The only thing left behind was a pair of sandals resting quietly on the riverbank, while the water remained perfectly still, as though nothing had ever happened. There was an old man in the village named Uncle Tu Lan. He was the only person who still dared to row past the abandoned dock. Every single time he approached it, he lowered his head and quietly murmured, "Please, allow me to pass." Then he scattered a handful of rice and a pinch of salt into the river. The younger villagers laughed at him. They called him superstitious. But he would simply smile and reply, "There are things in this world that are safer not to doubt." That summer, a university student named Min returned home from the city for his vacation. He had grown up listening to his grandmother's ghost stories, but he had never believed a single one. To him, ghosts existed only inside frightened minds. On his very first evening back home, he met up with several childhood friends by the riverside. One of them pointed toward the abandoned dock. "If you're really brave, go fishing there at exactly midnight." Everyone burst into laughter. Without hesitation, Min nodded. "Why not? It's only an old dock." None of them realized that simple answer would become the beginning of the darkest chapter of his life. That night, the moon disappeared behind heavy clouds. The river looked like a sheet of black glass. Crickets chirped endlessly in the darkness, far away. The gentle sound of wooden oars echoed across the water. Min carried a fishing rod, a flashlight, and his phone exactly at midnight. He stepped onto the old stone dock. The silence was overwhelming. Even the wind seemed to have stopped breathing. He lowered his fishing line into the water. Then, splash, a tiny sound, as if someone had just jumped into the river. He swept his flashlight across the surface. Nothing. Only a few ripples fading into the darkness. He chuckled, "Probably a fish." A few seconds later, splash again, this time. The sound came from directly behind him. Min spun around. There was no one. Only moss-covered stone steps, leading silently into the black water. Just then, his phone vibrated. It was his grandmother calling. Before he could answer, the screen suddenly went black. The battery was still over 80%. Yet the phone had completely died. A freezing breeze drifted across the river. It carried a heavy smell of wet mud. But it wasn't the ordinary scent of a river. It smelled like something that had remained underwater for far too long. A strange uneasiness settled deep inside him. He decided it was time to leave. Then he heard it. "Min," a soft voice, faint, distant, yet unmistakably clear. It was his mother's voice. Min, he froze. His mother was hundreds of miles away in the city. There was no possible way she could be standing here. His mind screamed at him to run, but somehow his feet began walking toward the water instead. The voice became closer, gentle, almost like a whisper against his ear. "My son, come here." The river slowly stirred. Tiny circles spread across the surface. Then, a mass of long black hair emerged, followed by a forehead, two pale eyes, a nose, finally. The face of a woman slowly rose from beneath the water. Her skin was deathly white. But the most terrifying thing was her smile. It stretched unnaturally wide, almost reaching both ears. Her eyes never blinked, yet her lips moved. Still speaking in his mother's voice. "Come down, mother is waiting." Min couldn't breathe. He wanted to scream. Nothing came out. Then suddenly, an icy hand grabbed his ankle from beneath the water. It should have been impossible. Yet the hand reached above the river's surface. Its grip was impossibly strong. Within seconds, Min was dragged across the slippery stones. Half his body plunged into the river. Beneath the murky water, he saw them, not one face, not two, but dozens, old men, young women, children, entire families. Every pair of eyes was open, every face stared directly at him, their lips moved silently. Were they begging for help, or were they smiling? Pale hands reached upward together, grabbing his clothes, his hair, his throat, pulling him deeper. Further into the darkness below, Min fought desperately. Water rushed into his mouth, his nose. His lungs burned as though they were about to explode. Just as he believed he was about to die, something landed on the river, rice, then salt. A booming voice shattered the night. Let him go, it was Uncle Tu Lan. The water erupted violently. The countless pale hands instantly released their grip. The river churned like hundreds of fish thrashing beneath the surface. Without hesitation, the old man jumped in and dragged Min back onto the shore. The moment his feet touched solid ground, everything went black. Min remained unconscious for 3 days. When he finally opened his eyes, Uncle Tu sat quietly beside his bed. The old man's face looked older than ever. After a long silence, he began to tell the truth. Many decades earlier, a crowded market boat had been caught in a sudden storm near that very stretch of river. 17 people drowned. Several bodies were never recovered. According to old Vietnamese folklore, those who perish beneath the water with unresolved sorrow may become water spirits. They cannot move on. They cannot enter the afterlife. The only way to escape their endless suffering is to lure another living soul beneath the water. Every new victim offers one spirit a chance to leave, but the drowned victim simply becomes the next water spirit. The curse never ends, it only passes on after that night. Min never laughed at the elder's warnings again. Before returning to the city, he joined Uncle Tu at the abandoned dock. Together they prepared a small offering of incense, flowers, rice, and prayers. They prayed that the restless souls beneath the river would finally find peace. That night, for the first time in years, the villagers heard no voices calling from the water. Everyone believed the nightmare had finally ended, but they were wrong. Exactly 1 year later, a group of young travelers camped beside the river. They laughed, recorded videos, challenged one another to swim after midnight. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, a camera was still recording. One young man suddenly turned toward the river. A smile slowly appeared on his face, as though someone familiar stood before him. Then he quietly whispered, "Mom, is that you?" Without another word, he walked into the river. Step by step, he never struggled, he never cried for help. It looked as though he were simply walking towards someone he loved. The camera continued recording. Only the calm surface of the river remained. Then, just before the video ended, a pale face slowly rose above the water, purple lips, lifeless eyes, a twisted smile. And through the phone's tiny speaker, a whisper could barely be heard. "Come down, I'm waiting." So if one night you ever find yourself standing beside a silent river, and someone calls your name from the darkness, remember this: do not answer, because sometimes one quiet reply, one simple yes, is all it takes for whatever waits beneath the water to know that you heard it.